I just made this super cute inside out 2 cake. This is Envy and she's for my niece's 9th birthday. If you'd like to see how you can make her as well, then keep watching. So this is my structure for Envy. In order to make a standing cake look like the photo you can see in the corner here, I decided to put all cake in the head, which means something needs to support that weight or it will not stand. So I've got a masonite board, which is basically a thin layer of wood that can support my threaded rod, and I've just got some nuts and washers holding everything in place, and repair washers, which are a little bit bigger, supporting the weight of the head around the cake card. I've got armature wire for that little leg that you can see kicking out, and everything's been made food safe. If you'd like to see a little bit more information on making a cake structure, then check out my video on my channel. It's how I made the Sully from Monsters Inc. cake, and that gives you a lot more detail. So let's get on with the cake here. As I said, I'm going to put the cake in Envy's head. So I've got some 6-inch rounds here, and I've just layered them off, nice thin layers, and I'm just putting them on top of the cake card, which I have supported with those repair washers, and I'm just layering it up with buttercream and jam. Those pieces towards the front, they don't have any buttercream or jam on them, and I plan on cutting them off to make that the face area. So once I've layered up all the cake, I'm using my reference picture there just to get the right shape. I've cut away all the white parts around so that I know what shape I'm getting, and in that cake structure video that I mentioned earlier, I also explain in detail how to make a proper template for your cakes to make it the same size that you want your cake to be, so that you can use it exactly how I'm using it here. So I want my cake to be exactly the size of that photo, that picture that I'm holding up. I decided it would probably be easier if I made the cake the head and then I just added the hair as sugar paste. So I've cut away all the hair from this picture. So then I'll just carve the shape of the head out of the cake, and then once it's all covered with sugar paste, I can add extra sugar paste for the hair, and then I can get the right shape that I want to show the hair flicking out. So once I've got the shape that I'm looking for, I'm just going to cover the whole of the cake head in white chocolate ganache. Once I have a nice even coating, I'll go over it with this flexi smoother and just make sure the whole of the head is smooth, no lumps or bumps or uneven edges. I wasn't quite happy with the shape that I had on this one, so I used the ganache to define the shape that I wanted a little bit more, and then just smoothed it out again with a smoother. I've sped this video up quite a bit, but I did spend a fair bit of time just defining the shape and adding enough ganache to the head because I wanted it to be really secure. Now I've got a photo of Envy on my phone in front of me, and I'm just using my knife to carve away a little bit of this cake at the front only, and the pieces that are left sort of towards the middle and the back, I'll use them to bulk out where the hair would sit, and this would be sort of like the back of the hair that you would see behind Envy's shoulder. And then I'm just adding a little bit of ganache on the underside of the cake card so that the head doesn't suddenly cut off and look flat, it's rounded as it should be. I've mixed up some sugar paste in a sort of teal colour. I think it was actually Colour Mill teal that I've used, and I'm going to use that for Envy's skin tone, and I'm just wrapping it around the whole of the cake, smoothing it against it and making sure there's no air bubbles. I'm smoothing it around the back as much as I can, but I'm not too worried about having a really smooth finish without any wrinkles because this whole area on the back will be covered with the hair. So the big piece that I put over the top wasn't big enough to cover the whole cake. So what I've done is I've just cut away one even line and I'm just matching that up with another piece of paste. And I'll blend it in as much as I can, but as I said, I don't really need to worry about making it seamless because I'm going to cover that with some more sugar paste to make it look like the hair. So now I'm ready to put on some of the features I am using my template again because everything should be the exact size that it is on the piece of paper. So I'm putting it against the head and I'm just drawing around the outline with my knife here, and that should leave an impression on the paste. I'll do the same for the mouth, and then I will cut out the area that I've left for the eyes. I'm going to replace this area that I've just cut out for the eyes with some white paste, and then I can paint on the colour for the eyes with the little sparkles and stuff that really gives Envy her character. And I'm using my template again for this, so I've rolled out a little bit of white paste about the same thickness as the greeny blue colour, and I'm using the template to draw around the eye shape on the white before I cut that out. And what that does is make sure it's the right size and shape rather than trying to guess and then maybe having to redo it several times. Once I've got the shape and size right, I'll just peel that up and place it on to the area that I've cut out for it. It is a little bit too big still because it does stretch, so I'll just trim that off with my knife and just smooth it and blend it into position. A little tip here when blending two seams together is to use that veiner part of your Dresden tool, because it pushes both ends together and sort of seals them without any raggy edges. And I've just done the same here with the other eye. So Envy's face here is really simple, but the eyes are where all the detail lies, so I wanted to get them right. Looking at the picture, she has whites in the back, teal coloured iris, and then the pupil is not fully black, it's black at the top and blue at the bottom. So what I've done is I've decided I'm going to take out the part that's going to be teal with a circle cutter that matches the size on the template. Once I've got that in place, I'm going to go back with a slightly smaller circle and take out that teal colour, and I'm going to replace that with a dark blue colour, and then I'm going to paint the top of that dark blue colour black and have it looking a little bit like a gradient going from dark to light, and I think that's what's going to give that detail as best I can. The only other way I think I could have got that would be to leave the whole of the eyes white and just paint the whole thing, but I opted for this in the end, and I think it turned out okay. You can be the judge when I show you that part. So I've also filled over the mouth with some black paste, and I'm just adding a little bit of teal paste on the top to give a little bit of a top lip there as well. All of these pieces of paste I'm just brushing a little bit of water on using my water brush, and that helps it to stick. I'm now going to put an outline around the eye with a very thin piece of black paste, and this just gives the look of maybe an eyelash. It's not quite an eyelash, but it definitely it gives the eyes a bit more dimension. I'm just copying the picture. So I feel that's about as far as I can take the face for now until we come back and paint in the details with the edible dusts. But I don't want to do that yet because there's still all the body work to do, and I don't want to be brushing off the paints while I'm working on the body. So we'll do those details at the end. So now I'm going to put on the leg first, and I'm going to work my way up. I've wrapped some florist tape around the straw that I put around the threaded rod, and that just helps the paste to stick to it a little bit better than what it was sticking to the plastic. It just grips it a little bit better. This is all food safe and it's all edible mediums that I'm using, but it's not going to be eaten. I know it's not going to be eaten, so I'm not too worried about the florist tape and things like that. But like I say, it is all food safe things that I'm using. So this is burgundy coloured Saracino modelling paste, and I've just rolled it out into a cylinder shape, and that's going to be the legs. These will be Envy's legs. I know they don't quite look like it at the moment, but I'm sort of trying to build from the bottom up and from the inside out, if that makes sense. Pardon the pun. But the idea is I'll put this on it, and that's the sort of, it's like she's wearing tights, and then when I put the dress over the top, you'll just see that little bit of the burgundy peeking out, and it should look the most like the picture. So there's lots of faffing with this, but basically I put the legs on and then I felt they were far too wide and thick, so I just rolled out a little bit of the modelling paste and then wrapped it around and blended it in with some water. So now that I'm quite happy with the thickness of the legs, and I don't think they could be much thinner now with the straw and everything, I'm going to do the dress. So I've got purple Saracino modelling paste now, and I've messed about with this quite a lot. I've cut it out because we'd be here forever, but in the end I found the best way to do it was to get a big thick wedge of the purple paste, make sure it's the right size against my template and the right shape, and then I'm going to stick that on the front, and then I'll do the same on the back, and I'll blend them together. When I was trying to do it all in one piece and then sort of mould it around the structure, it just wasn't keeping the shape that I wanted. So I think this worked out the best, and it is supposed to be a piece of clothing. It's going to have some stitching lines and stuff, so it doesn't actually matter if we can see the seams where they meet, because we would have a seam in a dress anyway. So yeah, I've got the purple paste, and I'm just sticking it against the structure and against the burgundy tights that I've got on here. So I'm just rubbing all that down, getting any fingerprints off it and smoothing it round at the back, because I don't want the back piece to be bulging out more than the front. I want it all to look like one piece of the dress. I'm cutting this on the board, but I'm using the back of my knife, because if you do cut a masonite board with your knife, you will get oils from your paste or your buttercream or whatever you're using. It will seep under the coloured part, the sort of glossy paper part, and it just looks horrible. It leaves like oil stains or oil marks. When the back piece of the dress is in place, I'll just rub that down and smooth out any seams again. And then I'm going to use my PME quilting tool just to run a stitching line down either side of the dress. Now I'm going to work on Envy's boots. These are sort of like, they look a little bit like Ugg boots, but they're blue. And I think this colour is a mix of the Saracino navy and I think it's just called blue. It might actually just be the blue, I can't actually remember, but yeah, you just choose whichever colour you think matches best. So I've got the colour that I wanted, and I've just sort of shaped it into, it's kind of like a thick teardrop, like it's not coming to a point, but it definitely needs to go more rounded where the toe would be. And I haven't put the top part of the boot on, the part that would go over the ankle, quite yet. I'm going to do that in a separate piece. But when I came to add the boot, I did feel that the dress was coming down too low, because I realised when I added the boot, it was going to take up so much space on the leg that it would cover the burgundy part that would be the tights. So by the time the boot's on and the dress comes down, you wouldn't see it at all, so I've just cut a little bit that way. To get the boot on, again, I tried lots of different things, and I found this to be the best method. So I've sliced a little bit from the back that would go around the straw, the rod, and then I've used a little circle cutter about the same size as that leg, and I've taken that piece of paste away, and that will allow me to wrap that piece of paste around the little leg so that it fits nicely, and it looks nice and smooth, and it's not bulky. I want it to look like a proper little boot. I think that's what will make it look quite cute. For the top part of the boot, I've just rolled a little bit of that blue paste out, and I'm using my knife to cut a straight line all the way across, and then I'm going to wrap that around that burgundy piece, and that should look like the top sort of cuff of the boot. I don't know if that's the right word, but yeah, the part that would go around your ankle. The other boot is a little bit more tricky, just because she's sort of kicking her leg out to the side. So what I've done is I've rolled out, it's like a thick oval, and pushing with my finger down towards one end and not the other to give it that sloping look, so that it's rounded at the toe area. And then I'll piece that onto that wire that I've got kicking out, and I've already got some paste on there from earlier. So it gives it something to stick to, but the crucial part is just making sure that the boot is in the right position, so that it looks like she's just kicking her leg out in a sort of cute way, rather than it looking like it's sort of in an awkward way, like she's sort of broke her ankle or something. I did make a bit of a mealie this one, to be honest. I would have preferred if I could have just put it on in one piece and it looked good, but to be honest, I ended up just building it up. I put the front part on and then I realised the back part wasn't thick enough, it wasn't level, so I just added more paste and blended it in with a little bit of water and my Dresden tool, and I think it worked out okay. It doesn't look too lumpy bumpy. So once I've got the boots on and I'm happy with the position, I'm just moving on to the rest of the clothes. So I've got a really bright pink piece here, and this is going to be the collar. You might notice that this isn't sticking quite as well as it has been previously. That's because this pink piece is fondant and not modelling paste. It doesn't need to be modelling paste, and I just chose to use the fondant because I had this really bright pink colour already to hand. But yeah, I just rolled it out thin, placed it on where the neck area is, and then used my craft knife to cut it into the shape of a collar. After that, I'm going to put on these little polka dots just with some white fondant. I can't actually remember if this is fondant or modelling paste, but either way will be fine. I've just rolled them out nice and thin, and I've used a really small circle cutter to cut out loads of tiny little circles, and I'm just using a little bit of water to put them all in place. Now I'm going to work on the arms, and I've got a little piece of armature wire here, and I'm just showing you the shape that I'm making with it. So I've sort of held it against the structure to get the right length, and then what I've done is I have bent it in the middle and then bent it where the elbows would be, but I do want it all to be in one piece because it looks like she's holding her hands together in front of her face, and if they're two separate pieces then I worry they would drop off. So it's just easier if we get the right shape and then we just make the appearance of two separate hands clasped with the modelling paste. So this is Tiffany coloured Saraceno modelling paste. I've rolled it into a little ball, and then I've pulled out where the wrists would be, and then I've just sliced down the middle and placed it over the top of this armature wire, as you can see, and I'm blending away the seam with my Dresden tool. Once I'm happy that it's on in place and it's in the right position, I'm just going to use that Dresden tool to mark out the shapes of the fingers. And then if I use the veiner side of the Dresden tool to push down deep, then it does look like the fingers are popping out and not just one piece of paste. This can be a little bit tricky because it's hard to get your head around where the fingers should be. It's a sort of odd placement, so I would suggest making the shape with your own hands as well as looking at the paper. But yeah, so in Envy it only has 3 fingers and a thumb as well. So yeah, you just want to make it look like there's 3 on top and the others are sort of off to the side. But yeah, make the shape with your hands yourself, because otherwise it's just a bit of a mind boggler. But I think it worked out quite well. When you push down with that modelling tool, it does look like the fingers are separate. But yeah, that would have been a whole lot harder to sort of form separate fingers and put them all in place. I think it's much better to start off with a ball and get the shape that you want. So once I've done that, I've just rolled out a little cylinder of purple paste, and then I've bent it at what will be the elbow. I've put in some creases with the Dresden tool, and I'm smoothing it onto that armature wire with my little cone modelling tool. I'm putting this directly onto the armature wire because, as I said, it's not going to be eaten. I know it's for my niece, it's not for a customer. I know it's not going to be eaten. It's just this, basically from the sort of chin on this character down is just for decoration. It's not going to be eaten. So that's all good. But yeah, if you were going to give this to someone else, you might want to cover the armature wire with some sort of food safe medium. So yeah, so I'm putting the modelling paste on both sides for the arms. A little bit frustrating with this part because I got the arms really to a point where I was really happy with them. They looked like the sleeves, the material was coming down, everything was how I wanted it to look, and then when you push it into place you do sort of mess that up a little bit. So it might be more sensible to just get it on the structure first before you start putting in detail like creases in the material and things like that. But yeah, so once I had the modelling paste on the armature wire and the shape that I wanted, I just pushed in on either side of the armature to push that wire into the paste that was already there so that it would stick. As you can see though, I've put a little support underneath. This is my little container for my tiny circle cutters, and this was just the right size to hold the arms in place where I wanted them, because they did want to drip down. So yeah, I would recommend using a support if you need it. And once I got them on place, I put the polka dots on, and I can just leave that little support there to set a little bit, and I moved on to working on the hair. So this is just fondant, it's not modelling paste. I think it actually is a little bit of a mix. I think it might be a mix of Tiffany modelling paste and some fondant, but I've put teal colour mill teal through this as well, because her hair is actually darker than her skin tone. She's not all the one colour. So what I did was I tried to get a darker colour for the hair, only slightly darker, and then I'm going to go back in with the edible dusts and do sort of like a wash all over, just to make it a little bit darker, but I don't want it to be like painted on colour. I want the darker colours to sort of seep into the creases that will be like strands of hair, and I think that will be quite a nice effect. So once I've got the general shape of the hair, which did take a bit of time because it is a fair amount of paste, it is quite heavy, and I would recommend just making sure that everything is sturdy in your structure and your cake, and you've got that coat of ganache on strong, because what you will notice later on in the video is that the weight of the hair that I put so much hair on that it did actually start to pull on the paste that I had put on her face, and a crack had started to form down the eye on the side that I'm working on right now. You'll see that later, and I'll explain how I fixed it as well, but I guess the easiest way to avoid that is to use less paste for the hair. So yeah, once I got the paste in place, I just went over with my modelling tool, veiner side of the Dresden, and I've just made wavy lines all over it. And yeah, when you're doing it you might think it's a bit basic, but when you do lots and lots and lots of these lines, it looks really good. I quite like to pull it down past the edge of the hair as well. I think it makes it look like it's not a straight line, it makes it look like strands of hair. I'm just doing the same all the way around the head. I'm adding more, I've added a big lump of paste behind that front part because I wanted it to look like the hair was flicking out, because that's how Envy's hair looks. But that piece that I had put up on the front would have flopped back, I think, over time, so I've added a big lump of sugar paste underneath it just to hold it up. And then I'm just putting more on the back to cover any of the head or any seams, and just making sure it's all the right length, there's no longer bits or shorter bits, and then just going over the whole thing like I did in the front, and just making those hairlines. I thought about just leaving it as it was and then painting that wash over, but what I thought was there's not enough hair and it's not dark enough, so I think you would have noticed the difference between the front and the back of the head. So I've added another layer of paste over the back in a darker colour of the teal, and then I've went over that again with the Dresden tool, just adding all the hairlines and pulling it down and making it look like real hair, as though it's sort of coming from a crown and it has a shed, if that makes sense. Again, like I say, it's pretty basic, it's just wiggling that tool and pulling it down, but I really liked how it looked in the end. I would put my hands underneath the edge of the paste where it's not actually pushing against the cake, sort of on its own, and if you push the Dresden tool into your hand as you do that, then it will allow the hair to kick out, and then it makes it look less flat, a bit more interesting. And that's all the big part's done. We can move on to the detail now, and we should be just about there. So I'm using my template again, I'm putting it on the front and I'm marking out those twinkles in the eyes. So I started out trying to mark it all out exactly, but it was quite a faff, and you couldn't actually see lots of the outline that I was marking on, so I think I ended up doing it a little bit freehand in the end. So I'm painting on the black. As I said earlier, it's a bit of a gradient, it goes black to blue, black up the top, blending lighter as it goes down until it's sort of navy blue at the bottom. So I'm just using black edible dust that I've mixed with the Culpit dipping solution, and I've just started off pretty thick black at the top, and it's more watered down as it comes into the middle, and I've put no black on the very bottom. And then I'm using a fractal edible ink pen. This one is, I think it's turquoise it's called, and I'm just going around the edges of the iris with that pen. And then this brush that I'm using right now is actually just a water brush. It's like a little empty plastic cartridge that it comes with, and you fill it with water, and I'm just taking away a little bit of the ink that I've just put on, and all that does is just deepen the colour in some areas and not all of it, and it just makes it look a little bit more interesting. And now I'm painting on the little white twinkles. So I've got white edible dust that I've mixed with the dipping solution. I think I did actually start with the dry dust. Yeah, I did. So those areas where it's a little bit more of a blur, those are the dry dusts. I haven't mixed it with any alcohol. And then I've made a thick consistency, and I've painted on the stars and the circles and some little dots. And now I'm just painting on some blush on the cheeks with, this will be Pelican Pink. And you can see that crack right down the right eye. It's the left as you look at it, but it's Envy's right. So yeah, I was gutted with that. It was just too much hair. It pulled down. But how I fixed it is to put a little bit of water on the crack, got a little bit of paste that's the same colour, and I basically just pushed the paste into the crack and used my modelling tool to smooth it all out. So it did really well, like it blended really well. You couldn't see the crack as much. I think it worked really well. And then I put that little circle cutter under the hair, and that supported it, and that held it in place until it sort of set a bit better. So I've got some teal coloured eyebrows up the top as well. I think that was just fondant, doesn't really matter, you can use modelling paste or fondant. It's unlikely that people are going to eat the eyebrows because they're just big thick pieces of paste. So I've put them in place, but it was quite warm, so I didn't want to put the marks in until they had set a little bit, so I went back to working on the hair. So I've mixed up some edible dust colour, and I think what I've done here is I've mixed peacock, the colour is peacock, with a little bit of blue just to darken it, and I've used lots of the dipping solution, the high content alcohol, and it's just like a really watery wash. As you can see, it was running down the back of the hair there. It runs into the creases and then it dries really quickly, and it just makes the hair look a little bit darker without changing the colour completely. If the edible paint was much thicker, then it would just change the colour of the paste altogether, whereas all I want is to give it more dimension, if that makes sense. So yeah, I just went around the whole head with that sort of runny wash. So I'm just doing some fine details now. I'm adding some luster dust, sort of glittery silver colour all over the hair to give it that glittery look, and then I can go and put some purple modelling paste on for her hair clips. I've used some edible glaze spray to glaze the eyes a little bit, and I'm using some kitchen roll just to protect the rest of the face, because I only want to glaze the eye. This will also protect the dust that we've painted on. If you were to rub your hand against that, it would take the dust off, but the glaze keeps it set in place, so there's no risk of that. And that's pretty much it. As you can see, I'm just adding some little hairlines into those big eyebrows, and we are done. What do you think? Does she look like Envy from Inside Out? Let me know in the comments if you would try making a cake like this. So we've got some nice close-up pictures of Envy that you can have a look at the finished product right before I drove it over to my niece for her birthday. So what did you think about your birthday cake, Brooke?
It's amazing.
Did you like it?
Yeah, I loved it.
Okay, are you ready to get a slice?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do it. So I'm back to voiceover in this bit because my family were in the background making lots of noise, so I had to mute the original audio so you didn't have to listen to all that squawking. But yeah, I'm just cutting a slice here. Rare that I get to do that, but I love to see the inside of the cake once we cut a nice slice. Like, it's so satisfying to see all those layers. You just need to take your time cutting a sculpted cake, watch out for the rod, and this one was really soft, so it was really delicious, but it did mean that Envy's head just wanted to fall apart.
and subscribe and hit the bell notification so they won't miss a single video.
Oh, you're the best. High five.